Hi and welcome everyone to a Fireside Chat about taboo topics, a series of conversations where I invite people to talk about topics that I find are not nearly enough talked about in our society. And today I'm here with Karin Freeland, and we are going to talk about lady parts, which is already like we refer to it as lady parts or down there, which already hints that it is in itself a big taboo. But before we dive into that, Karin, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Lisa. So my name is Karin Freeland. I am a self-proclaimed recovered corporate workaholic. I spent 15 years in corporate, chasing the paychecks, chasing the titles, just to wake up one day and realize, none of this actually makes me happy. What do I really want to do with my life? Why was I put here? And through this self-discovery journey, I decided to write a book and tell my story. And it's called The Ins and Outs of My Vagina, a penetrating memoir. And then in the process of writing the book, I found this new outlet of creativity. I was excited about life again and really went through a bit of a reinvention. And I realized I want to help other women do the same thing. Not literally write a book about their vagina, but just what do they want to do? What's the message they want to bring to the world? Are they living their true purpose? How do they step into that power that they've been given, that they've probably shelved or let other people pull them around? And so I got certified as a life coach, and then I specialize in people reinventing their lives. So now I get to do that through my custom one-on-one program called Edit Your Life. And I'm based in South Carolina in the States.
Wow. And yes, I do definitely see where our paths intersect, and like having this spark, zest for life again. And like, because we just have this one life to live here, and why waste it following things that we don't want?
Yeah.
And like as I shared, I believe part of what is keeping us from following that is that we have been taught to fear our own power, and our power lies in the womb, in our vagina, in our sexuality. Yes. So I'm really happy that I have you here today. How did you get into this? Like, was there a certain moment or something that made you go like, and this book will be about my vagina?
So interesting. And I talk about it in chapter 30, all lubed up with nowhere to go. But it was actually my husband's idea, believe it or not. And everyone's always shocked when I say that, but I was pregnant with my first son. So this was like 2009. And right around 7 months or so, I went in for a checkup, and my OB suggested the perineal massage, where you put olive oil on your fingers. Some people have heard of this. Some people are like, what? And you rub it on the vulva to help the skin become more supple and less likely to tear when you birth the baby. And I was like, okay, this sounds like a terrible idea. Thanks for your advice, crazy doctor. I'm not doing this. Because, touching yourself, olive oil down there, I don't know. It all just was like, this sounds like voodoo. I don't know. I can't. But my vagina, who is a character in the book, got me into trouble. And she was like, no, we should totally do this. Come on, it'll be fun. Like, let's light some candles and we'll get this olive oil going. And so I go for it. I give it a try. And it's like a shit show. You know what I mean? There's like olive oil flying everywhere. I can't get my hand in the right position that the doctor was able to do it in. It just was a complete fail. So my husband comes home from work and he's like, what happened in the bathroom? Why is there olive oil everywhere? Because, I'm like weeble wobbling through the house. I was exhausted just from the whole setup of the thing. And then I just didn't clean up because I was like, I can't deal with this right now.
And you were pregnant.
Right. So my husband was like, you know what you should do? You should write a book and call it I Don't Know My Vagina, because it's clear you have no idea how this thing works. And that was really the birth of it. That little seed was planted, and I started thinking of all the stories that related to my vagina. And I was like, oh my gosh, I think I do have a book. This is pretty crazy. But, it took 10 years to actually go from that point and getting the whole thing completed and launching it. So it was not an overnight success, that's for sure. It's a long process.
Yeah, and that's it. Like everything in life is a process, and
Yes.
like by writing a book, you also kind of reinvent yourself again by like, or even just when you start journaling, what I do quite often is just looking at what is in my head when I put it down on paper makes me see myself in a whole new way.
Yeah. And sometimes I don't like what I see on paper. I'm like, ooh, you know, like I got done with the book and I was reading it back because, you know, you do chapter by chapter with my editor. That was our process. So I'd write a chapter, send it to him. He'd give me edits and then I'd correct or say, no, I disagree. I want to leave this. And then we'd land on a final chapter. Well, I strung the whole book together at the end and I had to read the whole thing for the final proofreading. And I was absolutely blown away by my amount of body image issues. Like it really struck me. And I thought, why do I have these thoughts? Why am I so superficial sometimes? Why do I worry about, you know, how I look or how someone else looks? And it made me mad. And I was like, should I go back and correct it? But I was like, no, because these were my honest thoughts. This is exactly how I felt in that moment. And if I felt that way, then I bet there's a lot of other women out there that were feeling that way and have felt that way. Yeah. So I wanted to leave it in for authenticity, but it made me mad that I had so many issues with body image.
Yeah, and you're right. So many people struggle with it. I myself have had anorexia for I don't know how many years. And like putting ourselves out there so vulnerably helps others find the courage to do it too.
Oh, and for sure.
I mean, I've read the first chapters of your book and it's really like all the memories of my time at school come back and all the shame and insecurities. And I mean, children at that age, they are horrific to each other.
Right.
Or they can be.
Yeah. Yeah. And my hope is that, you know, maybe as moms and young women are reading this book, they'll look around to the women in their lives and go, okay, well, you know, my niece is going into 5th grade or 6th grade. Maybe she's getting her period. Maybe I should talk to her about this or how she's feeling or what she thinks about it. Is she excited? Is she nervous? Because we don't talk about these things, you know, like the extent of learning about my period was pretty much from my health class, which was very clinical and not super practical. You know, it wasn't like, hey, you might be standing in the shower and all of a sudden blood will come pouring out of you. You will be very frightened. Right. You know? So I just think if we can start these conversations earlier, age appropriate, of course, but we're all going to be better off for it as a society.
Definitely. So like, I mean, now you say vagina and all of that quite openly. I like the term vagina. It still comes from this very clinical aspect. And I find it really interesting that like most words are either like hiding, as I say, lady parts down there, or they are derogatory and like really, and I also see from some people I follow that there is a reclamation of these derogatory words like pussy, for example. There are by now women who claim that as in, yes, that's my pussy.
Right.
And I really love how there is this shift in perspective around the words. So what's your story about your lady parts? Like, how did you befriend them? How did you call them? Do you have your own name? Some people make up their own name, or the term yoni is quite popular these days.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, when growing up, it was like crotch. Like we used to, that's what it was called in our household. And I was like, oh, I hate crotch. Just like, the sound of it makes me want to vomit. It is such a wretched word. I can't stand it.
And it's so interesting, you know, because that feeling already gives you an idea of what these parts feel like to you, right on the inside.
Oh yeah, it's like repulsive to me. Like I don't want to use that word. So I don't want to talk about my body in that way. And then of course, growing up, oh yeah, like I was in the rap culture. I listened to almost exclusively rap and hip hop, all about how they were going to beat it up and what I'm like, oh, please don't beat up my pussy. That sounds terrible. And so I think I used a lot of derogatory words, and I do see on one hand how we can take that word and make it empowering, you know, words like pussy or whatever. But at the same time, it's almost like I don't even know if I want to use, I don't know that I want to use that word, you know, and I do have one chapter 16, and it is called Pussy Power. And that is like the only chapter that I kind of in hindsight was like, oh, I wish I didn't put that in there. I don't know. It's like one of those things that just, I guess we're always in evolution, right? We're always growing and seeing what we feel and what we like. So now I've just owned vagina. I feel kind of like the vagina queen, which was never really my intention, but I've been so frustrated by the advertising platforms and by the response I get from social when I say vagina or put it out there, that I have like gone to bat for this word. And I'm like, no, it is a vagina, and we're going to say it, and I'm going to say it aloud and proud. And it's not a dirty word. It is the proper term for it.
Yeah. And it's the proper term for one part of it. And the other part is the vulva. The outside part is the vulva, and the inner part is the vagina. So it's like, that's even like, we don't even have one word to encompass all of it. And there are already people who call it, like, I think vulvina or something, or vulvina, to make it like, to make a combination of the two words to have something.
Okay, well, that's new to me, but I love that you brought this up. And for those that are watching the podcast, you can actually see there is a disclaimer, a note in the beginning of the book from Dr. Lori Mintz, who is a sex therapist, and she's written several books herself. So she's very well known in the sexual health field. And she read the book and gave me a wonderful endorsement. But she said, the one thing that doesn't sit well with me, Karin, is that you keep saying vagina when you mean vulva. And this is going to perpetuate that whole misunderstanding of our bodies. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm not going to change it, because actually for comedic factor, it's kind of funny that like, here's a 40-year-old woman writing about her body and she's still calling it the wrong parts at times. So we left it, but I said, yeah, I'm open to putting a disclaimer in the beginning, because I do want there to be some education through this book. So I just laughed, because yes, we literally don't even understand all the pieces and parts that make up our own body.
Yeah.
That's crazy. So, but not
inside
guys
and outside.
You know, guys walk around all the time. Oh, these nuts, right? My balls, my penis, my whatever. Like, they got all kinds of words for it. And I mean, I remember in high school, kids, and I don't know if you have this in your country, but in the States, there was this Big Johnson. Like, everybody had these t-shirts called Big Johnson, and it was like a cartoon, but basically the whole joke was like about how big their cocks were. And I'm like, can you imagine if we had cartoon characters about how wet and juicy our pussy was, or how amazing our coochie is, or like whatever? People would be like, wow, slut, like what? But yet here were guys. And of course, in my high school anyway, they ended up getting banned, and then you couldn't wear them, but like they all still had them. They wore them to soccer practice or on the weekends or whatever. So that's in your face 24/7. And like, here I am told to cross my legs. Don't talk about your vagina. It's a mini, call it your mini, whatever. And it's like, what? Why do I have to be shamed for my body part?
Yeah. And like, most of us don't even like, they may be aware of that on some level, but then we think having these thoughts that I don't want to be shamed for it is a bad thing, because I'm told differently. And so there's like a very intricate psychological interplay at hand. And I'm just like fascinated with the idea of, what if we had called our pussy, like having, I don't know, pussy parties, whatever. How would the world look? I mean, yeah. So many girls are so insecure and so ashamed of their bodies. And what I found really, really interesting, almost alarming when I read the first chapters of your book, was that like, when you described the first time that you felt this good feeling between your legs and reaching up, like the first thought that popped in your head, oh my God, this might be shameful or sinful.
Right.
And you don't strike me as a very religious person, but like, how can it be that our first thought is still, this could be sinful?
Right. And so I actually grew up in an Episcopal household, Christian based, like that was a focal point, but we weren't overly religious. We didn't listen to Christian music. We just went to church once a week, and we said prayers before we ate. You know, it was kind of like your basic run of the mill, what I would say spiritual family. But I always knew from a very young age that, you know, there was a potential of going to hell, or like you had to behave a certain way if you wanted to get into heaven. Which I think I still believe, right? I still think that there is a fine line that we all have to walk, right? The narrow gate, the narrow path. But I think it was always presented to me incorrectly, and it does a disservice to so many religious women, because it's almost like sex is never good, or it should never be talked about. Your body's always taboo, but that's not the case, right? Yeah, like, I mean, you don't need to be like, well, I won't judge people, but I didn't feel the need to sleep around with hundreds of people, right? I have my fair share, and you'll read about them all in the book. You know, and I'm very open. I did not wait till marriage, right? I didn't do a lot of the things that I was quote unquote supposed to do, but I think you come into this, how can I say this? You come into this learning almost on your own, right? And now as an adult, I can look back and go, oh, these are the things that I can stand by and go, yeah, I'm comfortable with that. And there's other things go, oh, I hope somebody learns from my mistakes and doesn't do what I did, you know? But I mean, yeah, I mean, I think religion plays a part in it, because we don't talk about it. We don't say, hey, someday when you're married, if that's the belief you subscribe to, this is what's going to happen. This is what sex is going to look like. Instead, it's just like, wait till you're married. And then what? Is a magical fairy going to show up and explain how sex works and tell me, oh, you have to pee after you have sex so you don't get a urinary tract infection, you know? So I don't know. I don't know if I'm articulating this well, because I'm trying to walk the fine line and pay respect to those religious beliefs. And at the same time go, just because you are religious, I am religious, I wrote the book, does not mean that you cannot still feel pleasure and enjoy sex and have a wonderful sex life and tap into that sexual energy and bring it to bear every day of your life if you want, and still not have a belief in a higher power.
Yeah. And I mean, this higher power can look different for everybody.
Oh, yeah.
And like, I love that. And I've read the book Mary Magdalene Revealed by Megan Watterson.
Oh.
And it had finally opened my eyes, because like I have grown up with an uber religious grandmother who used religion just to justify her own means, to manipulate people. So like I have been told as a 2-year-old baby that I don't remember, but my father told me that my grandmother was standing in front of me and saying, if you don't first finish school and then university, then you will become a street girl, meaning then you will be a whore.
Right.
What does that tell a 2-year-old girl? Right.
Wow. Fascinating.
So I have had my very how can I call it? Like, I'm not a fan of Christianity, or I wasn't for a very long time. But this book, it revealed to me, because there is this Gospel of Mary that was found. Because in the Bible, in the end, what came in there were like 4 Gospels, and they were selected and parts were left out. And there is so much more that has not made its way into the Bible. And the Gospel of Mary shows how she and Jesus were like this couple practicing the true Christian belief of do good and find God in yourself and not outside of you, because God is within.
Oh, I have to read that book, but I think the sentiment of what you're saying is so great, right? So many of us are born into a belief system, whether that's religion, whether that's what we think about schooling, or that the family business is a doctor's. We're all doctors, so you have to be a doctor, right? We're all born into a belief system. And what I try to encourage, especially with life coaching and with my clients, is like, let's uncover what you believe. What beliefs that you have been given or that you have created for yourself are serving you, and which ones aren't. Let's pick and choose so that we can create a belief system, because there's no one right belief system. It's all what works for you. So that's one of the things that I just love about life coaching, because we get to own our power by saying, hey, that belief system that someone gave me that I have to work in corporate and be a do-it-all kind of woman, it doesn't work for me anymore. Actually, I'm totally cool with staying home and coaching and not being in the rat race anymore. You know, oh, wow, that's so freeing, you know? So same thing with your bodies. Like, okay, that whole beliefs that, of shame and that my vagina is not a source of power or something to hide, that doesn't serve me anymore. Great. So now we can move forward, right? And live the life that we're really meant to live.
Yes. That's why I'm such a big fan of menstrual cycle awareness. Like that's what I basically work with in women who experience troubles in issues in their menstrual cycle, in their menstrual health. And by listening to our bodies and what they can teach us, we find this inner power automatically. And it's so relaxing because it follows the natural cycles of life, and the cycle is regenerative and not the hustle corporate culture, which is constantly in spring and summer and spring and summer and spring and summer. But to have these phases where you let go of old beliefs and then allow the space to have something new take root in your life. Yeah. And then go to the next phase. And also with the religious aspect of like sexuality was basically taught to be like with the one goal of having children in a marriage. That was the only purpose it served.
Sure. Yes.
Like in the Bible kind of Christianity.
Procreation. Yeah.
Exactly. And like it's time to reclaim this power that we all have and have fun and do it for our own pleasure first.
And
not for someone else's, because this year I started my personal sexual healing journey because I've got quite a bit of trauma around that, and I always had to remind me over and over, oh, I'm not doing that for my husband, I'm doing that for myself first.
Right. And we do, because those are more societal messages that we are given very young. It's like all about pleasing him, And so that's why actually Dr. Lori Mintz's book, She Comes First, right? Or is that hers? Maybe not. Well, hers is Becoming Clitoris. I can't remember, but there is a book like She Comes First. I can't remember who wrote that one now, but anyway, that is like such a good concept for us to remember and for guys to understand, because they cannot just be like, oh, thank you, I'm done, so party's over. It's like, what? No, what about me? I matter here too in this relationship, whether it's, in or out of wedlock, but, we deserve to have pleasure as well.
We need it. I mean, pleasure is a feminist practice. Pleasure is liberating.
And then guys get upset, right? Because you have a vibrator or something. And it's like, well, if you were taking the time and not rushing through the act and making sure that I had an environment, not that, my orgasm is your responsibility, but creating an environment that is conducive for that, then we are going to have a much better time. And then I may not need my vibrator as much, but if you're just going to rush through it, then, well, sorry, she's coming to the party, or we're going to have a party without you.
Yeah. And also, not every woman is stimulated by penetration so much.
Like 20% are stimulated. Yeah. Like the numbers are like minuscule.
Exactly. And we don't talk about that either. So we all think we are wrong. Something's wrong with us.
Yes. It's crazy. Yeah. And that's why I wanted to write the book, because I thought if even one woman can read this story and go, oh, I'm not alone, I'm not broken, I don't have to be embarrassed anymore about this situation that happened to me, I'm like, it's totally worth it for me to put it out there and help other women.
Yes, that's the thing. You do it for one and you will help many.
Right. Absolutely.
Wow. So what would be your message to the world while we're at it?
Oh, geez, that's a big one, right? But I think love yourself. You were created for a reason, for whatever that reason is. And we deserve to put ourselves first and to figure out what that is. And we have all the answers inside of us. For so long, I felt stuck and frustrated, but I knew the whole time that I didn't want to be in corporate anymore, but I was scared. I was scared to face it. And once I owned my power and I said, nope, that's it, I'm going to make changes, I'm going to take the right steps to set myself up for success, it got a lot less scary. And now I get to live my dream life every single day. How amazing is that?
It is. And by putting ourselves first, we make sure we've got the fuel to do all these things we want to do, to be there for others. We can only do that if we have first filled our own cup, because what you give from an empty cup, you can give from an empty cup, but what you give is not fulfilling to the other person either.
Or yeah, for either of you, right? You're just drained. It's not your best self.
No, so take it slow, learn to release the beliefs that are not yours, of your choosing, not of your choosing. Get support from Karin, from me, whichever suits you at this point in your life. Where can people connect with you? Where do you like to hang out?
Absolutely. So you can always hit up my website, KarinFreeland.com, and it's Karin with an I, Karin. You can go to Instagram at Karin Freeland, and the book is available on Amazon or BarnesandNoble.com. And I want to just make sure that everyone is aware, especially since you're involved in menstrual cycles, is a portion of the proceeds of each copy of the book are going to go to Alliance for Period Supplies to help end period poverty and get women in need here in the States. There's 125 chapters, but help give low-income women the products that they need to be able to go to work, to be able to go to school and function every day in society and get ahead.
That's definitely another whole taboo topic that we should probably address, because period poverty is real, and there are people out there who have to decide, do I buy myself food or do I buy myself my hygiene products? I want to make that clear for everybody who isn't aware.
Well, I wasn't aware for a long time either, but then once you become aware, it's like you cannot be not aware anymore. It's like so frustrating that this is even happening in first world countries, but it is.
And even worse in not first world countries.
Right.
Or so thank you so much, Karin, for having this conversation with me. It's really, I hope it sparks a lot in the women that and menstruators and other people that listen to it or that watch the video. And I just hope that this message, your book, everything goes out into the world and we change this world one person at a time.
Thank you. I'm so appreciative of the support. It was great to be here with you today.
Then speak next time.